up, fellow kaiju not kaiju fans? Godzilla Karo here for a second podcast episode of the Godzillathon podcast. I am here with the one, the only,
No, Goji! What's up, people?
and we will be talking about the sequel that started the Versus tradition, Godzilla Raids Again, released on April 24th, 1955 in Japanese theaters. So, origins, very simple. Toe saw the success of the original film. Very, very simple reason. So, for the cast and crew, it was produced and distributed by Toho, produced by Tomoyuki Tanaka, directed by Motoyoshi Oda, written by Shigeki Hidaka, Shigeru Kayama, and Takio Murata. The music was by Masaru Sato, special effects directed by Eiji Tsuburaya, and cinematography by Seiichi Endo. Now, Hiroshi Koizumi as Shoichi Tsukioka, which is the main character, Setsuko Wakayama as Hideme Tamaki, who was, I believe, the love interest of Shoichi, Minoru Chiaki as Koji Kobayashi, Takashi Shimura reprised his role as Dr. Yamane, Masao Shimizu as Dr. Tadokoro. And then we have Haruo Nakajima as Godzilla, and Katsumi Tezuka as Anguirus. So for our history of the film, for me personally, I did not watch this as a kid. I saw clips of it on YouTube when YouTube started becoming a big thing, but I've never seen the actual film. I saw the film eventually while in junior high after I got the DVD of the film.
My history with the film, believe it or not, it goes way back to I was like 5 when my parents first got. I legit remember my parents going to the Walmart just to get this DVD. I'm not sure if it was Walmart or we got it online, but I'm pretty sure it was Walmart. We got the DVD for Reigns Again. We got classic media DVD that pretty much everybody owns. The classic, and I love this movie. I fell in love with this movie. I don't know what is it with this movie, but this history. I think this is one of my most rewatched short films because I do love this movie a lot. Funny enough, considering that it's considered one of the worst in the franchise, and it's my most rewatched. Yeah, but I've seen this movie a lot, and the history goes back way back to like 2006 when I first saw this film. When I was like what 5. So I have plenty of history to go with this film, and I've rewatched it so many times over the years. So yeah.
So, on to our thoughts. First off is the story. For me personally, it was nothing special. It's serviceable for the film, in my opinion.
That statement right there, I don't this I'm not gonna I don't disagree or disagree. We can agree disagree, but I actually love the story. The story is amazing. I love the story to this film. It's basically people leaving off of where we left off in the 1954 film, like months afterwards. People trying to get back together after the destruction of 1954, trying to move on from what happened. And yeah, I love the story. To be honest, it's genuinely a story, and I don't care what people say. I give a crap about these characters. I love these characters in this movie. I don't care what anybody says. Yes, there's not that much kaiju action, but what it gives you is good characters in this movie, and I love these characters in this movie. I don't care what anybody says. I love Kobayashi. I love Shinichi, not Shinichi. Main the pirate guy, the main character of the movie in his mom, and the main female lead in the supporting cast. I love every character in this movie, especially Kobayashi. Kobayashi is probably the best character in this movie, and is probably one of my favorites. And I love him. But I love the story. It's an interesting story. And I don't think it's like many people say. It's a pretty serviceable and forgettable plot. I think it's an interesting story. It's not too blank as many people claim it is. There's more to it than people say it is.
And Setsi went into the characters I feel as well. For me, they're not as deep as the previous characters, which is fine. They're not terrible. They all fit into the film for what the film was going for, and I do like them. They're remember. They're memorable.
Memorable.
Memorable. They're memorable. Mem- you
Memorable
remember
characters.
them. They are the characters you remember. I've given that in, by the way. So, they don't have to be deep for me to like them. They just have to be at least semi-developed characters. Now for the acting. The actors did a decent job with their roles. Really not much else to say from me. Now, your thoughts on the acting?
The acting for the characters are pretty spot on. I actually give a damn about these characters. I love these characters. I think the acting is spot on. It's perfect. I think it's spot on. I think every character delivers the role the way they need to and serviceable to the scenes that they play. I love the acting in this movie. I don't care what people say. I know people saying, "Oh, but this acting's boring in this movie." No, it's not. It's not. No, just no. I think the acting was serviceable and was a decent. It was yes, it wasn't as good as the acting in the first movie. Granted, it wasn't. It was nowhere near that, but it was still good acting from the character that we got from the performances of the characters, like Kobayashi and the others. Especially Kobayashi. I think Kobayashi is probably the best character in this movie. His acting was spot on, and the main character is Shurichi. And I'm gonna briefly touch upon the ending. Spoilers right here if you haven't seen the movie. It's a 50-year-old movie. It's a 60-year-old movie. Nearly a 70-year-old movie. Have you not seen it yet? But the basically the end of the movie, that line delivery that Shunichi delivers makes me cry every time I see it. He says, "Kobayashi, I defeated Godzilla. I did it." That line delivery says it alone that he says he's not only saying they defeated Godzilla, that's basically him saying goodbye to Kobayashi, saying that he did the job. Just that line alone. It's less words said than is said. That's like most people say, less is more. That line delivery was perfect from Shinichi. I think that's easily the best line in the movie, not including the other lines from Kobayashi. But yeah, that line right there stays in you, and I think it's probably one of the better endings of the show ever, to be honest. And Shinichi and Kobayashi's acting, they really act well off each other, and they're really good buds. And the acting with the female lead female lead character and
Yeah.
Kobayashi's love interests. Yeah, their acting is also spot on because you can tell that they love these two, and yeah, their acting, uh, Christ, all the acting is spot on in this movie. I love the acting in this movie. It is, I love it. I don't care what people. Yeah, the acting is pretty spot on for me. I love the acting in this movie. I think it's pretty good, pretty decent. It's serviceable. Yes, it's not as good as the original. Don't get me wrong. I will agree with people saying that, yes, it's not as good as the original. But I won't agree with people saying that this is the worst acting in Godzilla film history. I don't agree with that. It's not the worst acting in Godzilla film history. And it's not boring whatsoever. I never get bored of this movie. I just don't. I don't see how people get bored of this movie. But besides that, I think the acting is pretty spot on. It's the best one of the better actings in the show, to be honest. One and one of my favorite Showa films. I think. Okay, I'm gonna say this right now. If I've the first five movies of the Showa are pretty good. So yeah, and Reigns Again is amazing. I love Reigns Again. So yeah, it's perfect in every way.
Special effects. With some exceptions, it was on par with the original. I got one the same scene is when Shoichi's love interest, who is like a good few miles away from Osaka, looked out of the window, and it cuts to what she's looking at, and all you see is, I think the best way to describe it is is essentially the image of people would see during the fire bombings. That's what it evoked with me. And that scene really sticks. I don't know how accurate it is to the actual events of the fire bombings, but yeah. Though I will say that I am not a fan of the sped up sections of the fight, of the Osaka fight. It's just too fast in my opinion. Even though I can see why people will like it with the whole animalistic it makes the fight, but I just prefer the fights slowed down. Unless it's at like, I guess, normal speed and not a higher speed than normal speed, pretty much.
The special effects, amazing. I'm gonna say I'm gonna be praising this movie a lot, but the special effects, I love the special effects in this movie. And like you said, that shot of the main love interest looking into the distance and seeing that fire really stick with you, and pretty much what Q said reminds you of the bombings. Well, actually, I wouldn't say the bombings. What it reminds me of is imagery of World War II, imagery of people bombings of London, those images that you see of bombings that are happening in London, like the London bombings or the stuff that happened in Germany. It kind of reminds me of those bombings more than it does of the fire bombings.
I never
But
seen any pictures of the London uh bombings. Fire were they fire bombings? No, they were just regular bombings. I think, right? I don't know. I
it
don't
was
know that part of
it was a
history of World War Two.
yeah, but it kind of reminds me of that a
Mm,
little bit. I know it's kind of funny, but it kind of reminds me of the imagery of that bombings,
yeah.
of the images of that bombings from people what they said they saw from France. Now, I'm not sure how, like you said, how accurate it was to the fire bombings with that imagery, but yeah, I'm wondering. I have to ask someone from Japan to see if that's actually accurate. But I think, for me, I think that's pretty accurate considering what it actually looks like, if that's what Godzilla is trying to evoke. But for me, I think the special effects we hit it, and the kaiju when it comes to the special effects with the kaiju fights, I know people are gonna say that the sped up footage is kind of silly and is way too fast. Well, I like the sped up footage. I don't care. It makes them seem more animalistic. I love the sped up footage. It makes them seem more animalistic. Makes it feel like they're actual animals and not just giant kaiju fighting each other. And yes, Godzilla doesn't use his atomic breath at all. He only uses like twice in this fight, legit twice in this fight. But I think that's the part I like about this Godzilla. He doesn't use his atomic breath at all, mostly because it's not powerful enough. It's not as powerful as it will get in later short films. And as I'll say, I like the special effects with the miniatures, like especially the miniatures with the factory. I think the factory is probably my favorite miniatures in this movie because it makes me feel like that's an actual factory that's in Japan. I'm not sure if it actually is, but it feels like an actual factory. And let's talk about the Osaka miniatures for the main building, um, the Osaka building. You know what building I'm talking about? The Osaka building,
The
the
castle?
the castle. Yeah, the Osaka castle. The Osaka castle. Yeah, the Osaka castle is pretty looks pretty accurate in real life Osaka castle. It looks pretty accurate. Yeah, they did a really good job with that. I don't know what they did, but they matched it perfectly with the real life Osaka castle. I don't know how, but they did it. And we'll get to the kaiju stuff when we get to the kaiju stuff, but the special effects for me are pretty good. I love the planet miniatures. The miniatures are good. The buildings are good. The kaiju special effects with the kaiju are good. And I don't care what people say about the sock puppet. I do love puppet that they use for Godzilla, even though it's legit just the same puppet from the last movie, just with jugged out teeth, just with a few adjustments.
Next is the kaiju designs. Okay, so with Godzilla, I will say that his design could have been a bit better, though I will admit that in some scenes he does look good and scary, especially actually even creepy if you see him like just head on with those big ol' eyes. um, Joseph plates are fine, I guess. I prefer, out of the two, I prefer the 54 Joseph plate design. As for Anguirus, he looked fine in my opinion, though, and this kind of goes like, it's technically still about his design, I think. The fact that they made Anguirus a carnivore is an interesting choice, and I do not like that choice whatsoever. I'd rather him be just a very territorial, aggressive herbivore. Or in Kylosaur. I think that would have worked better. Physical design wise, he was fine. I don't mind it at all. I think it looks good for what they did.
Alright, kaiju designs, Godzilla. This is where I start to get a bit nitpicky. The Godzilla design looks intimidating in some shots, looks very goofy in other shots. But in shots, it does look scary. It looks really intimidating. But it does kind of look a little bit silly at times. But, however, I will not say it's one of the worst Godzilla designs in from any era. I don't think it's far from the worst of the Godzilla designs. I don't think it is. It looks fine to me. I think that honor goes to the Nets because of the design. But this design it looks pretty passable. It's decent Godzilla design. And now let's get into Anguirus. Or Anguirus, or Angzilla, or Anguirus, or Angorus, or Anguirus, or Nea, Dello, oh, everyone pronounces his name. Anguirus. I'm calling him Anguirus. I'm not gonna pronounce him by whatever names you want to pronounce him by. Anguirus. Okay, let's call him Anguirus. But he's pretty decent. I like his design. His design looks really intimidating and is a threat that you want to see Godzilla fight. And yes, this place kind of looks a little but the rest of the design looks really good. I think it's just the face that throws people off. even though I do love the horns, I think it's just the face that throws people off with the design.
I think one aspect of design, not to eroach all your time here, but I just thought of it. One thing about the design that I wished they could have made work was his carapace lifting up from his back.
Well, there is a reason for that. The reason why I'm gonna bring up the carapace part real quick. The campus was originally supposed to be split in two, but they decided at the last second to join it together, and that's why in a couple shots you can see the twin circus split into two. So yeah, the Anguirus design is passable. The rest of the body looks good. It's just the face that throws me off. But overall, it's a good design, minus the face.
Go
So
on.
overall, the kaiju's are good. Godzilla is passable. It's a passable design. Maybe not my favorite Godzilla design, but it's definitely not my least favorite from the show. And Anguirus, not my not my least favorite design from Anguirus. I think that honor goes to. I don't know what my least favorite Anguirus design is. I don't have one. I think I don't have one. I guess the Heritage Anguirus design. That's probably my least favorite Anguirus design. I guess.
Okay, so music. This one will be the shortest one out of all the section, all the thoughts. Um, Music not as good as the previous soundtrack. I mean, it works for what the film is, but if you put the soundtrack with any other Godzilla film, it would not work, in my opinion.
I don't know. This film soundtrack, what's with pretty much the Millennium Godzilla films, if I'm being honest. It will work with Godzilla 2000 and some, and maybe Godzilla vs. Megaguirus and maybe Tokyo SOS, to be honest. But yeah, this soundtrack is. I love the soundtrack. It's pretty good. It's a pretty good soundtrack. It gives you shots of really intimidating moments and makes you feel really intimidated and by what the coming threat that is Godzilla. Like those shots, like when Godzilla enters into Osaka, that sound of him of his theme of that sound just makes you scream, "Oh shit!" That's legit. What to quote my mom? That's legit what my mom legit said. Oh shit! But that's basically what this Godzilla is. I love this soundtrack. It's perfect. It has some whimsical moments. I love the main theme of the soundtrack and most of the soundtrack, even the climax. Every sound. I love the soundtrack of this movie. I think it's pretty good. It's probably one of the better soundtracks of the show. To be honest, I think it's pretty good.
No, for our overall thoughts, for me, I believe it runs just a little bit too long, in my opinion. It has no real messaging like the first film did, which it's fine. I mean, there could be some messaging, and I'm just clearly too blind to see it. But yeah, I will say that I could have gone without the prisoners chase bit. I just that kind of dragged the film down a little bit. I mean, I like how we show like the whole prisoner thing, but it's hard to believe that a group of prisoners would do this when there's a giant monster coming to the city they are in and being transported from. But yeah, that's really my overall thoughts. I still think that this film is a decent Godzilla film and works as the immediate sequel to Gojira. Because if you just didn't have this film, I just went straight to King Kong vs. Godzilla, it would feel like there isn't a connecting tissue between the first and King Kong vs. Godzilla films. Because it's probably just me thinking too deeply into this and whatnot. Passing it on to you right now.
Uh, my overall thoughts about this film? Easy. It's in my top 7 short films. I love this film. I rewatch it over and over again. I think the only other films that beat this film are probably King Kong vs. Godzilla, Mothra vs. Godzilla, Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, and the Godzilla movies, and the 54 movie. But number 7 is not bad. This film is probably one of my favorites in the show era. I do enjoy this film a lot, and it does not deserve all that hate that it gets. I think this is one of the best films from the show era. I think it's pretty decent. One, it's, it's one of my favorites. I think without this film, it's 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 it just feels the show era doesn't feel the same without this film, and you wouldn't have a connecting story without you wouldn't have and it wouldn't make sense without this film because you wouldn't know why Godzilla and Ice and King Kong vs Godzilla if you didn't have this film. So there's that. And plus, this film, and you also want to have Anguirus, who later returned and destroy all monsters because of his Gigan, because of his Megalon, and because of his Megagodzilla. You wouldn't have him, so yeah,
Was he in Godzilla vs. Megalon? I don't remember that.
he
Oh,
was. He fell into a cliff.
oh yeah, now I remember. Is that your overall final thoughts, or
He overall final thoughts. Perfect movie. As easy in my top 20 Godzilla films. Easily.
okay?
Yep,
Uh,
I'm going that far. I'm going that
oh
far.
my
It's in my
god.
top 20 Godzilla films. I'm going that far.
Okay.
But yeah, it's my favorite. But with that said, that's pretty much it.
And that is it for the Godzilla Raids Again Godzillathon podcast episode. Sorry that it's been like essentially a year since the first episode came out, and we're just now getting to this one. It just that with work, with my other projects, trying to find people to do these videos with me. So yeah, I am very sorry. It took me like pretty much a little bit over a year for me to get this out, and I thank you guys for waiting patiently. And with that being said, now go ahead, pick yourself out.
You can find me on Instagram at Anagoji2017. You can find me on YouTube at Anagoji2001. You can find me on Twitter at Anagoji Official. You can find me on Twitch at Anagoji2001. You can find me on Wattpad at Anagoji2001. You can pretty much find me, and you can also find me on Facebook at Anagoji, and you can pretty much find me anywhere at Anagoji. So yeah, I even have a TikTok that I don't use, but yeah.
And, well, you're on my channel, so I don't have to. Haha. We thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next one. This is Godzilla Kairu,
This is the one and only Anagoji.
signing
Signing
out.
out.